to another episode of Live Life in the Spirit. We're so glad you joined us. Last week was exciting. We started getting into chapter 18 of Revelation and the New World Order and what that looks like and the one world government.
And the fact that the push for that is not new. This is not a new concept, but has been going on since practically the beginning.
And it is worldwide. This is not just America, although America has been the biggest stumbling block. It's been the biggest hiccup.
Right, because America is all about nationalism. It's about being proud of your country and being patriotic.
Being free, being a democracy.
And they've had to slowly chip away at that and change that and make those things now are suddenly bad.
Oh yeah, if you're for anything like that, it's liberty, justice for all, and democracy. Nope, bad.
Socialism and even...
It's Marxism is right. What they're pushing.
It's really
right
what
now.
They're pushing, but they're calling it socialism.
Mm-hmm. Well, because that sounds better than communism, right?
It really does.
Because who doesn't like social issues, just like social justice, but it's not what it means anymore. They've changed the meaning. Well, we read the scripture last week in 18, and this was the fall of Babylon the Great, and we looked how the spiritual and the governmental come together. It's really one thing. They're not separate. Mm-mm. And the whole plan for this is because the Antichrist is going to emerge. We will argue it's after it's in the tribulation after the rapture, right. Because something has to be gone in order for them to do this.
It's right, because Christianity wouldn't allow this. The Holy Spirit, the restrainer, will not allow this to happen. So we have to be gone.
Mm-hmm. That has to be lifted. And then something's going to come in. We said, we don't know what that one world religion is going to look like. We're just kind of spitballing here, but Islam is number 2.
Right.
And it potentially could be because all the other religions, we've watered everything down so much and merged it all together that there's just one God. And so you take the one that's the most violent and they're probably going to win just by proxy, And we're working up to, if that happens, there's going to be a major crisis. And that's what they're looking for. That's why the whole New Green Deal, why the climate change, they've been pushing this. And we're talking headline after headline of them making this up just so that way they can push a crisis through to get one global movement behind this.
Right. To
force us into a one world government. But they're looking for a man with a plan. Mm-hmm. And it was
Spock
spake, who said, we are looking for a man to solve all our problems, whether it be
God or the devil
himself.
We will support him if he's got the right plan.
Yeah. So right there they don't care. Well, flat out that not be God, because this isn't God's plan. This is man's plan.
God's plan's in here. That's not part of the picture.
God tells you exactly what's going to happen. And so they're going to rise up this big global government. And the whole point, you got to have a global government, and they all have to be united. They all have to be one with no borders. So that way these 10 nations can then merge together. And it's at that pivotal 3.5 years after the Antichrist is the man. Mm-hmm. Who plays the Antichrist, the title.
After he's mortally wounded.
And he comes back. There's going to be a moment in time there where Satan enters him, and at some point, he wants it all for himself. Well, he can't do that if Babylon has become this great, unbelievable, huge city that has been running the world up to this point.
Right. And whatever Babylon is, wherever it is, it will be the religious and political center point of the world.
That's now brought everybody into a common good.
Right. And that has to fall.
It does. So, for him to be top-notch, it's the false prophet is going to try to shift that focus, that worship, from whatever religion it is at that time, focusing it towards
solely
the Antichrist.
Because he doesn't want competition.
Oh, heavens no. And when Satan has entered him, there is no competition. He's going to be top-notch. And then that's when the image of the beast comes up, that we said has probably got something to do with AI.
Right.
And it is at the point that he will go into the temple and he will declare himself God. Mm-hmm. And then he has to rule as a dictator. So you cannot have a one world government. You have to have a one world man with a plan.
Right.
The problem is this whole one world government idea is never going to work.
Well, and this plan from the beginning has a major fault to it. Mankind is corrupt. That we have a corrupt heart. We were unfortunately born into sin, and we promise peace, but we can't provide that. Evil people are the architects, unfortunately, and so it won't work.
Well, so how do you implement this plan? Mm-hmm. It's one world government. And they have it all listed out. It's socialized medicine for all.
Gun control. Because you can't arm people if you want to take them over by force.
Big government. Oh boy. Does that sound familiar?
High taxes.
Population reduction.
Immigration. Not only is there cheap labor, but open borders.
Affordable housing for all.
Which again, I know these things don't all sound bad, but all put together.
The reason why they're doing that is to make everybody push into one area.
Right.
They're channeling people through. Okay, I grew up on a farm. If you want to herd livestock, what do? You give them a chute. And you start out and you make it look like the grass is greener on the other side to get everybody want to go, and you just keep moving them into exactly where you want them to go until they're in a spot where they can't get out anymore.
And that's where we're headed.
Mm-hmm. Environmentalism.
Increasing debt, increasing poverty.
International welfare. We've already seen that. Class warfare.
And that's just running rampant. I mean, all of these social justice things, what's really happened is they've just ramped up and taken the few people who maybe thought ways that weren't great and given them a microphone and a voice, and then the masses start to follow.
Mm-hmm. No religion, but a single pagan religion. Now that sounds like contradictive, isn't it? No religion, but a single pagan. We keep saying that all this stuff sounds good, right? It mostly sounds good to Christian ears. Mm-hmm. But if it was Christian, if these are Christian ideologies, well, why are they out to get rid of Christianity?
Right. And the destruction of the family. Because if you've destroyed the family unit, which that's what's happening. That's what's happened. The family unit has been destroyed.
And we see that so much today. It started in Europe. You watch Europe. I've watched Europe for years. What happens there happens here about 5 to 10 years later as far as the cultural. So we look at just the things that are going on in the world right now. A lot of the stuff that we're bringing to you and showing you was from like 2009, 2015, 2019. We're in 2024 and look at what has just exploded since COVID even. You know, the AI is out of this world in just the last year.
Oh, it's
kind of spooky.
It's kind of spooky. Oh, very much so.
In fact, the intrusion of big tech into our lives and the rise of AI, Google, and tracking is creepier than you even know. And that was even a headline on one of the newspaper sites. I think it was the New York Times or the Washington Post. It was actually from a Vanderbilt study.
Oh, that's even worse. This is researched.
Mm-hmm. They even went on to say that AI will be billions of times smarter than humans. And what have we said?
It can't be smarter than humans, but they are faster. They can pull information from so many sources so much faster than we have the ability to do.
Okay, so think about AI as we've talked about what the image is going to be and the influence that they have. And now, Facebook, Messenger, you cannot even shutting it off. They showed you how you could shut off AI. No, you cannot. I did, and it shut it off for like all of 2 days. You cannot even go up and search for somebody that you want to find unless you go through AI.
Right.
There's no
Well,
choice.
In Snapchat, I got a AI chat, and it will not go away. It remains the very top conversation in Snapchat, and I've never even did anything with it. but I can't make it go away.
I mean, you go to Amazon now. See, this is when Amazon really first started coming out, and I had their phone number, and I kept it in my phone, in my contacts, because you cannot find. There is no way to contact them. They want you to chat, or then they want you to chat with someone. You cannot call them, but guess what? I have their number. When I call, I go right through. Now we'll get flooded with people wanting to know, what's that number?
How do you call Amazon?
But here's the scary thing with AI. You've run into this. So what are these chats doing to kids?
Oh, it's terrifying. You can search. I don't even know what you have to search for, but you can just search even like chat with a girlfriend or chat with a friend or meet a friend or whatever. You take some lonely teenager or some teenager who just is bored and has a connection to the internet, and it was, let's play a game. And it starts out friendly and, you'll get a reward or you'll level up or you'll get prizes. I mean, they use terms that these kids are getting in these video games, but then it takes it to a very dark level. And I could see very, very easily where there would convince them to either break the law or convince them to hurt other people or convince them to hurt themselves. And they talk about that, these.
And ultimately suicide, and we know that that's already happening.
Oh, absolutely. And so you can't be too careful.
There is a demonic force behind that.
Absolutely.
You know that. They're talking. Who's doing the talking?
Mm-hmm.
They say
when the people who created the technology don't even fully understand how it works, and they have said that right there tells you all you need to know.
Mm-hmm. This was the kind of information that Azazel was punished for eternity for.
Right.
Because this was the kind of information we were never supposed to have. It is literally the destruction. But we talked about that the entire goal of the global movement is to shrink the population down. How do you shrink the population down? Pandemics, famines, wars.
And you destroy the family. And you make it so that it's not just means of procreation that...
Well, America right now, I mean, we are down to, I think it was one kid per family almost now. I mean, more and more people are not getting married or waiting so late or choosing not to have children. And it's not just America. This is all over the world, except for Islam.
Oh, they still have.
And that's why the power of the numbers, But in order to get down, this is my point. If you can take AI and you can start convincing people to commit suicide, well, what's the end result there? Depopulation.
Right.
David Rockefeller said, all we need is the right major crisis and the nations will accept the new world order. They tried so hard. They pushed with COVID. That was
what they tried to use to unify the world.
Now, here's the scary thing. Before it was all, that's conspiracy theorists, and now they've come out and said, everything that people were trying to get out there is actually true. But they were suppressing it so hard and trying to dish it.
And the problem is they announce it on Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock that, that was true. And it runs one time and then it's buried again.
And usually they do it on Friday. So that way the weekend happens and nobody sees it. When they actually do a retraction or something like that. But here's the sad thing. They have openly admitted that they're creating these viruses all along. This new one, this bird flu that now has gone to cows, and now cows, if you eat cows, because they don't want you to eat meat. Why do they not want you to eat meat? That makes no sense.
Well, it's not healthy. Or it's healthy. I mean, they're going to make it so that we can't, they're going to control our food source. They're going to make that we can't eat the meat. Then they're going to make it so that we can't eat the crops. And then we're going to be eating chemically developed mush. And it tastes like steak.
Again, you will own nothing and you will be happy.
If you've seen Wall-E, have you seen that movie?
I have not. I remember when it came out.
We need to watch that. You would be interested to watch that movie. So they live in this floating spaceship. They don't walk anymore. They ride around. Everything is done electronically. They eat all the time, whatever they want, just, you know what I mean? And they're all like really big. They can't even walk anymore. But they don't know any different. That's just all because they were told that the earth was destroyed and was uninhabitable.
Well, I think this is actually the perfect time. I've been alluding several times about the two last major visions that I had, and I don't have a ton of them, but the ones that I have, they have been completely from God, and they've all come true. This one, hopefully I'm never going to know if it comes true or not.
Right.
It was at about early morning when I got this. It wasn't a dream. I was awake. I was actually sitting up in bed when I had it, and it was two visions back to back. The first one, what I saw was this person standing sideways in this little cubicle. They were in like a concrete a block cell, and maybe like 6x6 is all the bigger it was. And what was in there was one thing, and it was like the old 70s plastic chairs, you know, that you'd have the slits and it had the metal.
Four metal legs.
Yeah. And that's all that was there. And this person was standing there and had like an Oculus device.
Some sort of VR device.
Yeah, on their head. But they were completely emaciated. I couldn't even tell if it was a male or female. It was just a rack of bones. Okay? The only way I knew that this person was, well, I guess I shouldn't say for sure, I'm guessing was female, was because God brought me behind them so I could see what they were seeing. Now you have to realize that a lot of this stuff wasn't really coming out just yet.
Yeah, because this has
been quite a while ago.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff has already come to pass, but when I saw it, a lot of it was new information. But I was looking through what their eyes were seeing. And that's how I knew that it was probably a female, because they were standing on this veranda, okay? It looked like you were in Italy or some fancy place in Mexico, overlooking this big, lush property, gardens, trees. And there was a big table spread out in front of them. And she was looking off, and she was rifling through. Now, this is in her mind's eye. She was rifling through the clothes she was going to choose to wear for supper. And she was picking the shoes. That's how I figured it was probably a woman. And then I saw, and before her, what she was seeing was this filet mignon and caviar and this spread of a meal and wine glasses. And then I pulled back, and I could see what had been given her was this pink slop mush that was supposed to be like steak. And she's eating it, and she's groaning and moaning, you know, that it's a steak and this caviar, and it's so wonderful and everything. The whole time what she's eating is junk. And you could tell, because again, her body was totally emaciated. That is the Great Reset. That is, you will own nothing and you will be happy. That's how it's probably going to happen. Everything, that virtual reality exploded after that. Now we have this pink schlop that they're trying to sell us. They're trying to get rid of all of our meat. They're trying to get rid of cows. They tried it with tofu back when it didn't work. They're trying to make us eat crickets and bugs, anything to keep us from eating meat. And I remember my one question that I had looking at that was, what was the point? What really was the point? Why would a system, an entity, keep this person alive? Because they obviously, I mean, you can understand if somebody becomes slave labor, what's in it for them? It's free, cheap labor. But to be out expense to house these people, to feed them slop, to give them the stuff to basically babysit them, make them think they're in a world that they're not. Unless, I just had a thought, we don't know who that person was in my vision. Maybe this is one of them that sold their soul out to the entities to move it into that direction. I mean, there are so many political figures from all over the world and backers that have been pushing and pushing and pushing. Maybe deals were made, and that's why, because otherwise it makes no sense.
Right.
If the whole point is depopulation,
right?
Why would you keep these people alive?
Right, because you could, maybe they've proven they can kill much easier than that.
Oh, yeah, well, cheaper. You know, I mean, so you sell your soul You sell your soul, and you don't know. So then the second vision I had, which goes right along with last week and this week. At the beginning, I didn't know where I was at or what I was witnessing, but then God told me. I was sitting in like an auditorium. I felt like I was in an auditorium. And then I realized it was like a big mega church. You know, mind you, I've not ever been in a big mega church. All my churches are little. But I was in that, and it was dark, you know, but there was a stage. There was a runway in the shape of a cross. And it was all lit up. And as I was sitting there, to me it seemed empty. I mean, I couldn't see anybody, but yet I could feel everybody around me. I could feel people, even though I couldn't really see them. And then this guy comes out on this runway. Kind of looked like a used car salesman. Slick back hair. Smooth. Oh, he was so smooth. And I perceived that he was the preacher, snake oil salesman. Mm-hmm. And then God was letting me realize this was the false prophet. This is the one who's going to woo the masses. Okay, I got to tell you, because this gives me chills when I think about it. I had these visions before COVID. COVID hits, and what was everybody doing? Zoom.
Right. Church from home.
Mark Zuckerberg bought out Oculus. And you know why? He said his goal during COVID was to try to make a way so that people could sit at home and yet feel as though they were worshiping with everyone else. So he was going to take Zoom and he was going to merge it with Oculus. So everyone could literally sit in their beds at home in their pajamas and their pink fuzzy slippers on, put on their little Oculus device, and be right there. You can't make this stuff up. Mm-mm. And then, a lot of this has happened. Now, I don't know how far he went on that. He's still working on it. Don't kid you. The time just isn't right. I would predict myself that at the next pandemic, and I won't say if, I will say when, that there'll be an emergence of
that kind of technology.
Because if you could do that, and you had issued it to everyone, well, why would we need all these pastors? Maybe at the beginning they'll have it, so that way, that's how they're going to entice you. Because if they said, well, you have to watch only this one person, people go, I don't want to do that. So they'll probably let you watch your own people for a while, and then pretty soon those channels are going to start, oh, I'm having trouble, but I can watch him. Oh, okay, well, that one's been taken off, but I can watch him. And pretty soon, that cattle chute
is getting smaller and smaller.
And you're getting right down to the one person that they want you to listen to. Mm-hmm. You say, how could that happen? We are seeing it right now. We're seeing it all, our denominations, and I'll probably get in trouble, but I'm calling it as it is. It has been indoctrination, and it's been a social agenda this whole time, and you were talking about that. What's the new thing now? It's all Christian nationalists. Oh, how they word it and they term it?
Makes it sound like it's the most horrible thing in the entire world.
You can't be proud of the country you live in and love God. They've changed the definition. So that way everybody will get behind it. But the point is, we started with racism, then it was colonialism, get rid of the old people. Now it's Christian nationalism.
Well, gender,
yeah. There's just so many things through this, and you see the breakdown of so many sectors of Christianity. The core fundamentals, we've talked about this multiple times. There is no virgin birth. There is no Son of God.
There is no heaven. There is no hell.
Yep, he didn't really die. He didn't really rise. He died, but he didn't really resurrect.
Right.
Just chipping away everything. And the masses are following that. If you had asked anybody sitting in the pews today if 50, 30 years ago, if they would still be sitting there, if they walked into a church for the first time and that's what was being preached, they'd say, go right out the door. Mm-hmm. And now it's that boiling water with the frog.
That's right. That is absolutely right. We've talked about that so many times. Oh, there's no way. There's no way they could get us to do that. And then they have, because they move the line just little bits at a time. And they let you get comfortable and they move it again and they move it again.
And they call it things that make you feel like, well, if I don't get behind it, I'm a bad person.
That's right. That's right.
No.
Look into the core of it. Look into what's behind it. Pray about it. It is not what it seems.
The other thing that has really made its way, you look at TV, you look at movies, you look at what's going on, you know. We always talked about, you see that circle from aliens to, I don't know, whatever the new thing is. Well, there for a while we had the vampires, and then we had the witches. Witches have actually been on the move, Wicca, big time. Bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, they're getting so big, they've been there, but now they're making headlines. That's the difference. You're seeing that when Brett Kavanaugh was in, oh my gosh, headlines were witches hexing and putting spells on Brett Kavanaugh. Multiple headlines of them putting spells and hexes on people that they don't like or that are against where the spiritual forces clash. You know, we read a spot in there where it talked about, in Revelation, in this chapter 18, there was a verse where it said that there would be no light in their lampstand. And what did that make you think of?
That takes me back to the letters to the churches in chapters 1 through 3 in Revelation, because he was standing there with the 7 lampstands,
and he was threatening a lot of them. You'll have your lampstand removed. And it says that God shall send them strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in the unrighteous. Then the beast was captured with his false prophet, and he worked signs with his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast. That's a cumulation. That was the word that I could not say because it wasn't cumulation.
Culmination.
Culmination. I could not say culmination to save my soul. Culmination. I can't say it.
Culmination.
That's basically the culmination of everything that we just looked at. Should not I say it?
I shouldn't have looked at you. It was my fault. I should have been looking up there. It would have been all right.
So what we're seeing here is basically the whole culmination of all of this. This is everything. Jesus is going to finally come down and he's going to say enough. And he's going to put his foot down, and that's when it's all done. But before we jump to the very, very end, I wanted to bring in, for those of you who know Joel Richardson, he has some really interesting books out there. One actually goes all the way back to 2007, and it is spooky how much has changed from 2007 and yet how much has not.
Right.
The players underneath. You know, I argued when we looked at the Antichrist, I said, there's a lot of stuff going on with Saudi Arabia and the prince, his son, and how he's more free-thinking, he's a little more liberal than his dad, and he's trying to push this movement and peace and treaties and deals. And I said, he is a player to watch and to pay attention, because I have a feeling that there could be more to it than that. Okay, I had no clue. I did not read. I should have read Joel's book in 2007, and then I would have said, well, there it is. But he wrote a book with Mystery Babylon, and he says that he thinks, so we talked about that as if Islam was the one to come up for the religion, and if that were the case, where would that centralized local place be that would be close to Israel?
Mecca.
He argues, now we're not saying it, but he argues that Mecca could be the revived Babylonian Empire.
And it's interesting because in the Middle East, there is so much movement and so much power and so much stuff behind the scenes. I had no idea how much, I mean, you know they have a lot of oil over there. You know they have a lot of money. I mean, you just know that, but
You don't have any concept
of the amount of money and power that they are wielding on the worldwide stage.
Well, how much power they've kept. You know, when the Ottoman Empire, when Turkey lost all that, you kind of think, oh, okay, that, you know, empires rise, they fall, they're no more, because Turkey, they changed their name. But no, they have, what?
I'm sorry. Turkey.
Yeah, that's what they call it.
I know, but it's always going to make me think of Joe Dirt's Dirty. It's dirt, son. Don't church it up. Sorry.
What we're seeing when that Ottoman Empire broke up, but they have been mapping this out for years, looking to expand that back to that entire Ottoman Empire yet once again. So this really comes down to a tale of two cities. It's always been Jerusalem versus Babylon, Jerusalem versus Nineveh, Jerusalem versus Rome, and it's going to be Jerusalem versus the new Babylon. Mm-hmm. Now, I am horrible with geography. That guy, I knew who was over there somewhere.
It is in Saudi Arabia.
Somewhere out there. But it's in Saudi Arabia.
Kind of the middle of the Arab states over there. And a control of power, a seat of power for sure.
Well, and it's the primary city of idolatry, the biggest ever. It is the greatest financial support for the Antichrist. So they also tried to do something. They tried to make it the biggest city by linking 4 cities together with this train Amtrak kind of thing. I don't really know how that's going, but it is. Jeddah is the greatest seaport in the Middle East. They haven't replaced Dubai yet at the Red Sea, but they're trying. Mm-hmm. And it is the holiest city, of course, of Islam. And it's King Abdullah that's actually trying to connect these cities by this high-speed railroad. And it's so that way it only takes 20 minutes to get from any city to the other. Well, it sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Yeah, they're just connecting everybody even more.
Right.
So if we were to look at this and try to plug that in to make a case, well, how would Saudi Arabia, how would it corrupt the kings of the earth with her financial seduction? So there's a Saudi lobby, not to be confused with
Hobby Lobby.
And how do we know this?
Because they're open on
Sundays. In Washington. And the Wahhabi lobby and the Salafi lobby, which is the most vile and violent group over Saudi. It has the greatest influence and the biggest financial backers in Washington. Think about that. The 3 largest lobbyist groups are from Saudi Arabia.
That's not good.
It's not pharmaceuticals. I mean, they're up there, but not.
It's not
this is foreign nations. We actually have laws that say the foreign governments cannot come in and own our major things, and yet we're selling them all off to China and everybody else. We're not supposed to have foreign influence, and yet here we've had Saudi Arabia locked dead set into our governmental workings. We're talking decades.
Right. This is
decades. No. And like I said, it goes all the way back.
And they'll do it in mostly legal ways. So like for the Clintons, for instance, they donated money to their foundation, which I believe was at that point in time was helping AIDS in Africa. Mm-hmm. Did they care about AIDS in Africa?
No, but it was money for favors.
Right.
It goes back even farther than that. It goes clear back with Carter. They were constantly bailing Carter out of stuff. George Bush, okay, so we talked about 2 Democrat places. Well, guess what? Well, they gave $30 million to the Clintons. The Bushes received over $1.5 billion in friendly loans.
Right. Which, I mean, we know that they're right up there in oil. Mm-hmm. So it makes sense.
Well, and even Barack Obama, his whole Ivy League schooling was funded by Saudi Arabia. Now, can people, well, and although it is foreign interest.
Oh, absolutely it is.
Yeah. In fact, if you go to the book on the House of Bush, the journalists actually uncovered all of this, and you can find out anything you want to know on that.
The problem is they're not philanthropists. They don't care about the causes that they're supporting or whatever. They want influence in our government and in our political system and with our people.
Well, and the interesting thing here is when the whole hierarchy of people from Saudi Arabia came about, they just decided one day that they wanted to have a monarchy and they were going to be it. And just made up this dictatorship. I mean, it was really weird how all this came about, but how much money and how much influence. And this has really hamstrung the U.S. Dealing with ISIS and Al-Qaeda, the House of Saudi. They control the government, the media. What most people don't realize is almost the entire media is owned
by foreign interests, like
Saudi Arabia. In fact, and they've changed even how the news is presented. Like there was an uprising in France, and he even got the anchors on Fox News to not say that it was Muslims that were doing the unrest. They were protesting. They weren't just protesting. There was violence,
unrest, right?
They got them to change it to just say teen unrest. Completely get ISIS out of it.
Right. That is influence on a level that is significant.
Well, so who was the one having all the influence on COVID? We don't know, but who was in charge of all the media? The ticker tape that was running, that every single person. Now, Glenn Beck, I mean, this is alleged, but
it was from a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend.
Not really, but a friend of
I know.
Of his. But they said that when he left Fox was right before the Saudis took ownership of Fox. Ali Betnal is one of the largest shareholders of Twitter. And they controlled all the information at that time. In fact, they were controlling the entire war over there through Twitter. And so when this is, again, this is not political on which side you pick. This is just showing how the influence of this. When Trump was going for his political run there and for the elections, Twitter went on maintenance and just completely went off. And that was during the unrest in Iran, during the presidential unrest. It was a key component. I mean, you can influence so much. You know, in Revelation chapter 17, it talks about the 7 heads and the 8th head, and it's the 7th one who suffers the wound.
Right. And then
he is the 8th
head. Right.
And it says 5 had been, 1 is, and 1 is coming after the 7 crowns and the 7 hills. And
well, we talked about that before, that the initial 5 was Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. And then the one that is, so those are the 5 that were, the one that is at that time was Rome. And then this revival, this 7th will come, and then there will be some sort of revival, and then it will be the 8th. So the 7th and 8th, it's like 2 parts or 2 pieces.
He's part. He's part of that group. And then he takes over as the 8th, the one after. You know, I see the parallel here with the first fruits, or the 8th day. In Jewish tradition, the 8th day, you say, how can you have 8 days in a 7-day week?
Because it's the end times.
The 8th is what comes after the end. It's the new. Even Satan was paralleling that. So you have the 7, and then what comes after all that is pushed off to the side? The 8th. Anyway, that's in Daniel 2 and Daniel 7. So there's going to be that singular empire
with 2 phases, because Daniel 2 talks about the legs of iron, and then Daniel 7 talks about the legs of iron and clay. And so it's just 2 phases of this same empire.
So the only one that meets the characteristics of everything, the lion, the leopard, the bear, that is Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece. It is Islam.
It's the Islamic Empire.
The composite of that lion, leopard, and bear.
So right now it looks like it's gonna be between the Saudis and the Turks, like they're kind of vying for this.
And they've been fighting this. It was a revival of an empire that survived for 1,300 years and then died in 1923.
That was that Islamic caliphate. That caliphate was there for a long time.
And that's when Iran came out. You think about it, well, Iran's always been there. Since we've been born, so you just assume that they've always been a country.
But they have
They
not.
had not. Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, all that stuff. No, that was Persia. Erdogan wants to be the head of this Ottoman Empire. We talked about this with Turkey. He's reformatting this whole geographical construct. And in fact, he's even going in and saying that in this new one, that he owns part of northern Iran, part of North Iraq. So the Turks long for the day when they can control the whole Ottoman Empire again. So Erdogan is actually pitting Turkey against
Saudi Arabia.
So the head one was Istanbul, Turkey. It was the head of the Ottoman Empire, and when it suffered the head wound, it was no more really.
It's true.
That all disappeared. But if it revives from Turkey, they would be in conflict and they would turn on Saudi and
burn it to the ground. Interesting
Huh.
concept.
So there could be, now, granted, we said that, the Antichrist is going to turn on that. What would that look like? So the harlot is riding the beast.
Right.
Who here are Lone Ranger fans? I got to give this to Joel Richardson. I love this analogy that he came up with. He said it would be like Lone Ranger rolled silver, right? They were 1-in-1, or it'd be Batman and Robin, or whatever. But think of Lone Ranger because he's riding Silver, the beast. And everything's going great, and Silver's taking him where he needs to go and hauling him all around, and then all of a sudden, Silver turns on the Lone Ranger
And kill him.
and kills him, devours him. And he'd be like, what?
What just happened?
Yes, that's a shock. That's what John is trying to get at. That's the, oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming. That's not predictable. That's why.
Right. That's what's going to happen at that time. And so it would make sense that there could be potentially two kingdoms sort of vying for that, and one would squash the other.
Well, in order for the Antichrist to become the full head over everything, Babylon can no longer exist.
Right.
Because everybody's turning to Babylon.
Right.
He may be the band with a plan and kind of running things, but they're still all being drawn to Babylon. Babylon has to be destroyed. Because if they destroy Babylon, the city, not only is the government destroyed, but what else is destroyed?
The religion.
And he has to have that so that way all the religion goes to him. Does it kind of make sense now?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think I'm wrong on this. I think I could be. But I think that's
makes
kind of
sense.
the track that I'm getting. Well, so it could be, if, again, Joel Richardson is just making the case that this could be Turkey and Saudi, the whole thing, because everything fits. He says it's kind of like a glove. If one finger fits, but the rest of the hand doesn't,
Then you don't.
or
keep
three
the glove.
fingers, you can't. Yeah, you have to have all of it fit, and it does fit the most with this right here. Because if Turkey conquers Iran, then there would be the start of the 10-nation coalition. The kings of the north, and that's where Dan and Daniel 11, kings of the north and Egypt and the Turkish Muslim Brotherhood, they get kicked out of Egypt. And then the king of the north and of the south, it's that whole fighting right there.
Well, and even right now, Turkey has been turning on the Christian Kurds. There's a sort of a nationalist Islamist movement that's happening, a danger that the world hasn't seen before. And if you think about it, where were the 7 churches that Jesus wrote the letters to? We're all in Turkey. And where is the throne of Satan? In Turkey. So,
Yep. Turkey moved those troops, as I said, into northern Iraq, because that's what they're looking to take over. And actually, he said...
when Iraq was like, hey, what are you doing? Get out of here. What was his response?
He said, get out. Know your place. And he cited the 1923 map before Iran and Iraq. Well, Michael Heiser has a lot to say about the Prince of Persia and the Prince of Iran. It was Antiochus Epiphanes that came in. And that's what's going to be repeated again when the Antichrist walks into the temple and declares that he is God.
Yeah, that was the abomination that causes desecration.
Turkey is one of the most amazing strategically geographic places. It is a bridge in between all those ports, everything for trade. Principalities are at major work. Again, we're talking about all this, but you have to realize that these are human and earthly players with spiritual components that are moving the chess pieces.
Absolutely.
In Daniel 2, the final kingdom, that one specific description, it will be a divided kingdom.
When Muhammad died, they really divided the party into two, the Shiites and the Sunnis. And so it does fit Islam because they are a kingdom that's divided.
We even see that Russia, the bear, it enters into this. And they have pipelines that they side with the Shiites and Iran against Turkey. All these players back and forth. Who is China siding with? Iran. Well, how can we know these things? It's not because we're like super, super smart, but I have always said that.
Listen to the places that she has to cut out. We're on grade smart now.
Thank you. But I always say, history repeats itself.
It does. And part of that is geography, all of the players, and part of it is because of these principalities that are over it.
Exactly.
Go back to Ephesians.
At the end of chapter 18, verse 23, it says, "The light of the lamp shall not shine in you anymore, and the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall not be heard in you anymore. For your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. And in her was found the blood of the prophets and the saints, and of all who were slain on the earth." I want you to think about this area geographically. Where were the disciples martyred? Where were the apostles after that martyred? Where were most of the Christians and the Christian crusades? Now, I know we can get into that whole thing about who was backing it and who really, what was the Christian crusades. But you had so many innocent men and women throughout all the years who have tried. Well, look at even the Holocaust. It wasn't just in Israel. They were all over. God is done. He is saying at the end of chapter 18, he has set up this whole time. This is after the last 42 months of the Antichrist reign. And God says,
enough is enough.
And he just ends it. David even prophesied this in Psalms 2, 1-6. He says, "Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against his anointed, saying, let us burst their bonds apart and cast away their cords from us."
And then in Ephesians 6, verse 12, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places."
So all these schemes, everything that's going on, that man's trying to push his agenda, the whole one world thing, the great reset, everything, it's going to fail. And why is it going to fail?
Because it's not God's plan.
Nor is it Christ.
Right.
Mankind will promise peace and all the things that they cannot produce. Evil, dark people are trying to implement all of this. And yet, the scriptures have already told us in advance.
Spoiler alert, we know who wins in the end.
And they will fail. Why is all this being told to us now? It's so that way we can prepare, so we can tell others. And how can we prepare? Letting them know about the love of Jesus. Let them know about the saving grace of Jesus. Let them know that we have to be counterculture. All roads do not lead to God.
No.
All but one lead nowhere. And the whole point of getting everyone to comply and to get into one world religion and into one world government will ultimately fail.
And it will lead, if you continue to go along with it, to eternal damnation.
So just know the signs of the time. Just know that they're not even, the enemy is not even being hidden anymore.
Mm-mm.
He's not even trying to be secretive. He is right out there in your face. It's in the headlines. It's in the news. It's in everywhere. They're telling you exactly what they want, the direction they want to go, and how they want you to follow right along. So our goal and our mission and what we feel that God is calling us to do is just to make you aware. Again, there is so much information.
There is.
Oh,
we barely touched on the surface, and even that was a lot, I know. But just open your eyes and take a look around, and don't be discouraged. Know that this story ends in hope, but be prepared. Don't be caught unaware or unprepared. Make sure you have your oil in your lamp. Make sure you're awake and ready when he calls.
So grab the steak knife out of your back pocket. We encourage you to go do your homework. Don't just take our word for it. Don't take the people that we've listened to and the books we've read and the things we've seen for granted. Go do your research and then go and tell others. Because once you know, you can't unknow. And whether you choose to believe it or not, you can't say, we didn't tell you.
Until next time, shalom.